Good morning. Hi, I'm Lola, and please don't upset your neighbors. It's already a trying time as it is. My neighbor is currently enjoying his Saturday and playing a lot of music, so I hope it's not like disturbing anyone. But yeah, today I'm going to be talking to you about engaging with activism on social media. It's going to be a quick lightning talk. There won't be time for any questions at the end, but I am on Discord, so feel free to chat to me there if you have any questions. All right. So yeah, I'm Lola and I am the host of Lost in the Source, which is a podcast about my journey as a Black woman through the tech industry. I'm also an anti-cheesecake activist. Don't argue with me about it. Cheesecake is trash, and I stand by that. I am not willing to die on that hill. There are a few hills I'm willing to die on, but I will put a flag on that hill. I am also a developer advocate at Samsung Internet, who is a sponsor for today and is the reason why I'm here. And if you've never heard about Samsung Internet, we are basically an Android web browser, and it is a fork of Chromium. And the whole, I guess, ethos idea behind it is for users who are privacy aware. So we have features like ad blocking and tracking prevention and, a fully customizable interface and things like this. And if you've seen any of the Samsung Internet tweets and the blog posts we've written out, a lot of the stuff we do is about like putting users first. And so we work with other organizations such as W3C and, other standards bodies as well, and other documentation organizations. And the whole idea is just about making the internet safe and hospitable for all users. That's kind of like the focus. So many of us are involved in W3C or other bodies in some kind of way because of that. So let's get into this talk, engaging with social media, engaging with activism on social media, right? If you remember 2020, if you can cast your mind that far back, it was a year and a half. It was it was a lot. We had the pandemic, then we had like murder hornets, then we had like UFO sightings, which frankly not enough people are talking about. There were things flying in the sky and we don't know what they are. Then you had like this weird movie release of Cats, which decided to do like cats, but lifelike cats, but humans, and it was just very odd. And we had like really sad and harrowing things as well. Namely, Black Lives Matter. A lot of Black Lives Matter protests spurred up because of the death of George Floyd. And the kind of, I guess, benefit to that was a lot of people became engaged with issues of racism and race theory and things like this through what they saw on social media. And I think that's something that we have to give credit to social media for. It has done a really, really good job of making global issues actually global, because Black Lives Matter is not just an American problem, it's a British problem, it's an African problem. And so it's social media has contributed in making this making more people more aware of the global issue, right? And that's not a bad thing, that's a great thing. And if you have never heard of this woman, her name is Angela Davis, and she is an activist, and she's been an activist for a very, very long time. And she made a point in an essay called Transnational Identities. And she says, when Palestinian activists noticed the canisters in Ferguson, what they did was to tweet advice to Ferguson protesters on how to deal with the tear gas. And that's because they realized it was the same tear gas canisters. And so we see how social media is used as a tool to bridge different organizing bodies, different activists, different movements together to help each other and to, I guess, preserve their activism, right? And that has really opened the doors for a lot of people to do a lot of actions, and not all those actions translate well. So if you remember last year, there was this whole black box situation where people were sharing black boxes online to kind of like, I guess, show solidarity with Black Lives Matter, right? And that's not a bad thing, actually. The actual Black Box Initiative was for a specific industry, it was for the music industry, and it was for a specific group of people, music artists, people who work in the music industry, to stop promotion on Blackout Tuesday. So the idea was you stop promoting your, you know, album or songs or whatever, stop trying to get money from people for these things, and instead have a conversation about Black Lives Matter. That didn't translate well. And what ended up happening is a lot of people not really understanding the context just started flooding your social media feeds with black boxes. And so I thought this would be a good way to kind of like look at ways we can responsibly engage with activism on social media. So I've come up with like a 3-point system. It's not like solid, it's not like written in stone, you know, it's just like a helpful guidance kind of thing. So the first thing I would say is, if you're engaging with social media, if you're engaging with activism on social media for the first time, you want to like properly engage. And so what does that mean? That means like, find out what exactly is happening, what's going on, who are the affected people, how are they affected, why is this happening? You need to find out as much context as you can. And that whole idea is that you need to educate yourself on these things, right? And a big part of educating yourself is listening. Listen to the voices that are speaking on these things. Who are the voices of authority? Figure out who they are and just listen to them. What are they saying? What are they saying they need? And you also need to do the external work outside of social media. It's not enough to come on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or even WhatsApp and, you know, just talk about these things or watch other people talking about these things. You need to engage outside of that context. And I think that's why the black box thing didn't really translate well, because not enough people were doing the outside work. The whole point was that you share the black box on a specific day, on just the one day, to not promote your album, not promote your single, not promote your thing, but then to use that space that you would normally use to promote that thing to talk about the issues affecting Black people. And so in order to have those conversations though about the issues affecting Black people, you need to do external reading and external learning. You need to look at books, documentaries, podcasts, and etc. You need to really actually engage with the issue. What does engagement not look like? Just retweeting. Like, you can't just retweet any old thing. You can't stop at the retweet. You need to do more. The next thing I would say that you need to do is amplify. You need to amplify the voices that are already speaking. So you need to share credible voices. Not everybody who's talking about these things knows what they're talking about. And if this is your first time engaging with this kind of issue, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's Me Too, whether it's something in the disability and ability community, whether it's an LGBTQIA matter, whatever it is, if this is your first time engaging with it, you probably do not have the words, unless you are from the community that's being affected at the time. But likely chances you are not, and you probably don't have the words. So find people who do have the words and share their voices. And not only that, but make sure the resources you're sharing are accessible. If you're sharing images with text on them, make sure they have alt text with them. If you're sharing videos, make sure they are captioned. And, you know, just the typical accessibility things that I hope we are all aware of. And if you're not aware of, that's also okay. There are loads of blog posts about these things, right? So sharing accessible content, and also sharing resource needs. I think the End SARS movement is a really good example of how it was amplified in a helpful and productive way, where Feminist Co, who were a distributed organization, you had members of Feminist Co in Nigeria, America, the UK, and all over the world coming together to raise money for food, for lawyers, for medical emergencies and medical bills and things like this. And that was only possible because other people shared and amplified those resource needs, and like specifically. And I think another great example is like the Minnesota Bail Fund, which had, you know, when George Floyd was killed, had a surgence of like donations because of sharing those resource needs. What does amplifying not look like though? Spreading misinformation. I think we're all aware how spreading misinformation is dangerous. So I'm not going to even talk too much about that. And also sharing inflammatory content. And so what I mean by that is not sharing content that is sharing content that includes murder, that includes assault, and things that you just wouldn't want to see on your newsfeed. It's triggering, it's traumatic for a lot of people to have to see, for example, George Floyd being killed over and over and over again. Don't participate in that behavior. Also sharing inaccessible content, and sharing actions you don't have the context for. So as I said before, like the black box was for a specific context for a specific audience. If you are not part of that audience, then you shouldn't probably share. If you're not the intended person to take that action, don't take the action. That's okay, you don't have to. And the only way you know if you're part of that audience is if you engage in the first instance. The last thing I would say to do is to act. And I guess this is the most, I don't know, I guess the most obvious and the one people draw to the most because it also can be the easiest. And what does acting look like? It looks like donating if you can. If you can't, that's also okay. It looks like finding ways to contribute to your local community. What a lot of people don't seem to realize is that things that affect your local community, such as food inequality, such as education inequality, childcare and things like this, are also feminist issues. They are also ability issues. They are also race issues, because people from these groups are more likely to be affected by these issues in a negative way. So if there's a local food bank near you, it will help marginalized people if you either contribute your time to your local food bank or contribute food or whatever it is the food bank needs. And the same goes for other community efforts that, you know, work to make people's lives easier. Another way you need to act is you need to challenge yourself, especially if you're not a member of the community who is being oppressed. You need to look internally and see and look at the ways that you may be complicit. It's really, really difficult work and nobody wants to do it. We all need to do it. We all need to look at the ways we have been complicit in the oppression of other people. That is an action, and it's not necessarily an action that needs to be broadcasted. You don't need to tweet about it. You don't need to write a blog post about it. You just need to do it. And a good way to do that is, as I said earlier, reading. Reading is essential. You need to read the works of people who have been talking about this for a really, really, really long time, who have dedicated their life's work to this thing. Educating yourself will inevitably help you challenge yourself in a positive and productive way. So what does acting not look like? It doesn't look like silencing voices in the community. It doesn't look like having debates on Twitter with people in the community who are trying to do the work. It doesn't look like getting them to explain things to you. It doesn't look like centering yourself as an ally. It doesn't look like talking over voices in the community. It doesn't look like hijacking actions and movements and hashtags. And it doesn't look like being defensive, which is one I think we're all sympathetic to. We all get defensive when people, I guess, come at us. And that's okay, but you need to recognize you're being defensive and just take a step back, or just listen, just stop talking and just hear what the other person is saying. It is difficult work, but it is important work. And I think from last year, I could see that it's work a lot of people actually do want to do and do want to engage in. And I think the final thing we should remember is that online action works in tandem with offline action. So these retweets that you're sharing, these resource packs that you're sharing have real offline effect. As I said, NSARS is a great example of that. A lot of the organizing was online. It had to be online, especially with COVID, especially with the fact that a lot of the organizers were across the world. It had to take place online, and the online action had real offline benefits. You had people who couldn't afford medical bills getting medical treatment. You had people who were unrightfully arrested, being freed, because of the works of lawyers and all of this kind of stuff, and people actually going to jails to make sure that people were released and things like this. You had protesters who had food and drink while they were protesting, umbrellas to protect them from the rain and all of this. And that's all because of the online action. So it's not useless, but it should just be done in a productive and healthy way. So yeah, that is pretty much it for my talk. I have been Lola Odelola. You can follow me on Twitter at Lola Odelola. You should also follow Samsung Internet on Twitter at Samsung Internet. You should check out Samsung Internet's Medium blog, which is also medium.com/Samsung Internet, where we have loads of like tutorials and cool things you can see. And yeah, check out what we're doing. Thanks for listening to my talk. It's been good.